was Lighthouse service in 1951 and retired again in July 1989. Going back a little bit, really, prior to joining Trinity, I was called up for the Army in 1941 and remained there until I was demobbed in 1945. And then I had several little jobs really in Woolwich area. And I decided to join BP, which I remained for 2 years. It was on tankers travelling up to the Persian Gulf and back. But it was a little bit boring really on the sea all the time, what have you. So then I came out and decided to join the Lighthouse service. And of course in those days they were very, very short of keepers, and we had to go to Blackwall on different training programs there. The first thing was how to bake bread. That was the first thing. And then how to light the lights and semaphore, which we had to learn in those days, and how to use an RT on several other little projects, you know. So I was only in Blackwall for about 4 or 5 days. I think the course should remain about a month, something like that. And I was whisked off down to Anvil Point, which that was my first station. Quite a nice little spot. I think everything there was IOBs, and I don't know if you remember the old fog gun. Used to wind it, put a tonite charge on and a detonator in it, and you wound it up above the lantern and explode every 5 minutes or something like that. That was all. You had a plunger inside, and that's what set the bang off to warn a shipping during foggy weather. Then I went back to Blackwall again, and then tried to complete the rest of my training. And then I went to, where did I go next? I was at Spurn Head. I was up there for several months. I was still in SAK then, and it was when we had the floods up there. I went there just after the floods. Bit of a mess really. And that was all IOBs as well. But it was revolving lens, and you had to wind it up every 45 minutes. So then I came back to London again, and then I was transferred more or less down to Cornwall, where the first station I went to was Round Island, which was a very hard station in those days because everything was old-fashioned, the equipment was old-fashioned. We had biform lens, which weighed about 13 tons, and you had one of these burners in each lens, and we had to fill this tank up in the lantern, as we called it in those days. They called it an IOB. You had to pump air into it so many pounds to keep the pressure on. And they had the old Hornsby's engine there for fog, and they were terrible things to start up, you know, huge great flywheels. You would heat them up, and once the burner got hot underneath, you could start it. We had one lever there, and you had to be very careful. You had to catch the flywheel as it revolved around, and when it got to the top, you had to give it another blast of air, and if you didn't watch the step, the darn thing wouldn't. Oh, that's right, yes, it used to fly backwards if you had to be careful. So you had to stop the thing and start all over again. It was quite a busy station round on in those days. And I left there, then I went to the Wolf Rock. The worst thing about the Wolf was getting on and off there, you know, in those days. You had to spend, well, 2 months at a time. But it wasn't bad once you got inside, you know. But the weather was always bad there. And you had these huge, great gunmetal shutters to keep the seas out, you know. So I spent about, this is when I was in SAK, still in SAK on Round Island, and Wolf Rock, I was still in SAK there. And eventually I got back to Blackwall and completed my training there, and I got my appointment as AK, and that was to the Wolf Rock, which I've spent over 2 years there. And then they made it a 2-year station for keepers because it was one of the worst in England. So then I went back to Blackwall, and then I got transferred to Canvey Island, the Chapman Light. And it was a very queer setup thing. It was on stilts. And we had a little boat attached to it, which we could row ashore occasionally when the weather and tide was right, to pick up our groceries and mail. But it was very tiny and small, a very tiny kitchen. Of course, everything was square. And I think the fog bell was a bell, and you had to wind it up where this equipment was in the kitchen, and that took about every 30 minutes. And the light was well, the normal IOB paraffin lamps. So I was there for about 6 months, and then where did I go next? Oh, I came back to the Eddystone Lighthouse. I was up there for 4.5 years, which I enjoyed the Eddystone. Plenty of space, you know, and it was quite a nice place. So after that, I went back to Round Island. And that's where we, it's the same equipment there as it when I was there previous as SAK. Then, of course, all as technology arrived, Trinity House began their modernisation program. So a lot of work went on Round Island. I was there for, I suppose, 11 years altogether, on and off. So I got appointed there, Round Island. I was 4.5 years there. And we started our little garden there. And of course, during the automation, we had more pleasure time. So created this garden. It was quite nice and all, you know. Trouble was getting all the soil there from land. And I had a ship. Got the local farmers give me a lot of soil, and I think we took about 30 bags down Penzance, not all at one time. And then the Trinity House ship, Stella this was, she took it all over to Round Island. It was all hoisted up to the top and started a little garden there. And of course a lot of the old material from the lighthouse was, we made a greenhouse there as well. Oh, we had quite a nice crop, tomatoes and lettuces and what have you. And outside garden we made, built up a brick wall, or a stone wall I should say. And what else happened then? And oh, then we had the amateur gardening people there and took pictures. I don't know whether you saw it or not. 2 lots. And then we had a chap from Falmouth, Tom Hoyle. He was a great gardener down there, you know, and he heard about it, so he came over as well. So we had a busy time. Now, what happened now? Oh yes, as soon as the completion of all modern equipment on round on, and they damn well shifted us, you know. We done all the hard work over there. And then where did I go from there? Oh, I had to go to Gibraltar. That's right, I put in for Gibraltar for holiday relief work, which was quite nice in Gibraltar. I like Gibraltar. It was all electric station, super typhoon fog signal. And I spent about 4 months there at a time. I went there 3 times, Gibraltar. And I came back to England. Then, I had a spell of time on Bishop Rock. And that was a bit hair-raising because you all had to be hoisted up by winch and breeches buoy, more or less. And yes, I did enjoy the Bishop. And then I got transferred to Bull Point at the time when there was the fog engine house collapsed and fell into the sea, and I was there for about 18 months. And then it was to Lundy Island, which was quite a good station there, Lundy Island. And I was at Lundy South. And then after, I don't know how many years it was, a couple of years there, that was about 3 years, they sent me to Bull Point again. And then I went back to Round Island again for a couple of years, and finally it was coming to my retirement, and decided to send me to Lynmouth Foreland. Quite a nice little station, but the road down there was terrific, very windy and narrow. Then I stayed there. I spent 2 years there, and I must tell you this one. Just before I retired, a month before I retired, the Daily Mail, they were advertising a trip to New York and flight back on Concorde. So I took it. It was wonderful. Wonderful experience. Great trip out there on a Boeing 747 it was, that's right. Spent the weekend there, and we flew back on Concorde from New York. Great experience. And then I retired. That's it.
So that was more or less a retirement present to yourself?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a retirement present, but I had to pay for it. But it was a wonderful experience, you know. And then we went there for a holiday, Walt Disney World. That was when I retired, you know.
So you joined in 51, was it?
1951, yeah.
And finished when?
1989.
So how many years is that all told you did?
38, wasn't it? 38 years.
Can you tell us a bit more about Spurn Point, or Spurn Head?
Spurn Point, yeah. It was a narrow causeway from Withersea to Spurn. It was a road, concrete road. I think it was built during the war, you know, from when soldiers occupied it. And there was no fog signal there. It was just a tower, you know. It had lights on the second floor, and a lens, of course, had to be wound up. Well, just like an ordinary grandfather's clock, more or less. Weights in the bottom tube, and you would have wind them up. You got to the top. then the bell would ring and then stop then. So then they started to modernise that. They took the top of the dome off, I think, to put a new dome on, I think. Well, then I left there then, you know.
What was the housing like?
Oh, it was like an old hut there, you know, in a circular. It used to be the lighthouse there many, many years ago, but I think they took it down or knocked it down because it was falling down in the sand there, you know. Oh, it's just like an old Nissan hut, really, you know, there. Very, very primitive, what Trinity House was in those days. So, that was that.
Was it a bit wild living out on the end of a peninsula?
Well, it was, yeah. And it was bitterly cold there in the winter. You had the easterly winds blowing in there, you know. And the sand sometimes used to come over the road and we had to go and clear the road up. Quite an experience, really. And they had the lifeboat station there as well, so that was quite handy. We were very friendly with them. And yeah, it's quite good there, you know. I think that's one of the first stations. They had a TV down there and we could go and watch it, you know, in the lifeboat house there. Yeah, it's pretty good.
So the facilities for the keepers themselves wasn't that brilliant?
Well, no. Well, it never has been really, is it? You know, until now, of course. But I think the greatest achievement Trinity House done was put helicopter pads on, because you were really sure you could get on and off. Of course, it all changed month to month about then. And you could guarantee to get ashore on time. But, except in fog, well then, don't fly in the fog. I see old Captain Bond now, he's all retired as well, isn't he? All gone. He used to be the, Jeff we used to call him, he used to come down Penzance and airlift us to different stations wherever you're going, you know. Carry all their supplies out and what have you.
Now you said you were at Bull Point when the engine room went over the cliff.
No, I went there after.
So what was the damage like?
Well, terrific, really. And half of the engine room was, well, over the cliff, you know. Yes, and they built this huge, great tower. It was like on stilts there. And they brought machinery in to give a fog signal. Of course, there was no good in the engine room. It was built away from there. One of these compressors, you know, would start it up and so forth. Yeah.
So they had to move the whole tower as well, didn't they?
Oh yes, they built a new tower in the back there. Well, it was on a bit of a slope at the back of the where the principal keeper lived, you know. So that was that.
And Eddystone, you said that was a nice tower.
Oh yes, it was quite a good tower, a big tower. You could move around in it, you know. Great place for fishing as well, especially bass. Yes, I enjoyed the Eddystone. I enjoy it now, watching it, you know, as I travel down to, I go down to Santander on these mini cruises, you know. You can see the old Eddystone flashing away there. And I hear people, you listen to people, you know, they say, cool, fancy being shut away, the keeper's there. Of course, they forget it was all automatic, you know. And then you hear somebody say, oh, there's the bullfrog, look, you know. I ain't got to butt in and say, you're wrong.
And what was it like inside then? You said it was roomy.
Oh, it was a huge, great tower, and, well, more or less something like the Eddystone, really, you know. Had plenty of room to move around. Yeah, I enjoyed that there. In those days, the a tug company in Plymouth, Reynolds Tugs they were called, they used to take us out there, you know, if the weather was suitable. And It was a bit modern there when I was there as well. Done it up a bit. So yeah, that's it.
Did they winch you on board the Edison?
Oh yes, we was all winched on board, yes. They had one of these hydraulic winches up in the about halfway up the tower. You lowered the winch down and the boat people would come so close to the tower, and then you'd throw ropes to them and they'd grab the one with the wire on and just stepped in it and hold fast and we were wound up onto the landing down below. Yeah, it was quite good.
And I take it all your food and everything else came the same route?
Oh yes, yes, yes.
So did all your food boxes go on the set-off with you?
Oh yes.
And then...
Well, they landed the keepers first. That was the main thing. To get the keepers that were going on and to get the ones that were going off first, that's first priority. Then all the food and, well, stores, if you like, everything came ashore that way, you know, onto the landing, and then it was hoisted up into the winch room.
So relief day was quite busy.
Oh yes, you would send weather reports to Plymouth there, to Reynolds Dogs. They used to listen in at previous night, and also next morning, say around about 6 o'clock, they wanted to know the conditions, because the tug used to take us near the Headstone Rocks, and you jumped in a little small boat, and then they rowed you ashore, you know. So that was that.
And the Chapman, you were saying, is tiny inside. How many keepers were there on the Chapman?
Only two, not three. Oh, it was a tiny old place. I don't know, I thought years after, it was a very dangerous place, you know, because sometimes you had ships coming down and in foggy weather, and you look out the window next morning, they were almost dropped their anchor next to the Chapman Light. And I remember one experience there was used to have a lot of barges going up the Thames, you know, and one or two broke loose and just missed the tower, you know, by inches. Very dangerous place.
What was it built of?
What was it built of?
Yeah.
It was just like, well, it was all tin actually, like galvanized, that's all it was. And it was just these stilts, you know, what they use, and it was just a pokey old place.
And what rooms were there in there? Just a kitchen?
There was only 2 rooms, and there was like a little tiny room for the bedroom, but it wasn't enough room to swing a damn cat, really. You had 2 bunks, one at the bottom, one up top. And the kitchen was very, very tiny, very tiny. But experience, I suppose, again.
What facilities, washing and toilet and stuff like that? Or
Oh, you just had an old Nelson bucket as usual, you know, you were telling them, I expect.
Mhm.
And you just washed in the kitchen, had a sink there and all, and that's all they had there.
So I take it wasn't far to go to put the lighting on that tower?
Oh no, just up one flight, that's all.
And that was oil lamp?
That was an oil lamp, yeah. Very, very primitive. I aren't sure whether eventually it collapsed or what. Because it was on 4 stilts, and they say that 2 of the stilts was in the sand, but the other 2 were protruding into the deep channel water there. A bit dangerous. But I believe it collapsed in the end, I think, and done away with it. So that was that.
Can you tell us about your time you did on the longships?
Well, it was more or less the same as any other tower, you know. Very small tower, but well, then again, it was all the same equipment there, IOBs, and and a fog signal. But you could get down on the rocks there, you know, at low water, providing the sea was all right, wasn't too rough. But that used to be done before the helicopter came into operation. To be done by the local boatman. He had to row out to us and bring all our stores out and God knows what. And very small inside. I think it was only one room, and of course, as you know, it's all round. I think there was about 4 beds in there. So I was glad to get rid of that place, really. Shut up in the old tower. It's similar to Wolf Rock, really. You had all these steel shutters there, and in case the seas come up and got inside the tower. But on the whole, it was pretty good, I suppose.
For storms and stuff like that?
Oh, yes. They'd shake a bit, you know. Good job, too. Otherwise, they might collapse.
So which was the worst storm you experienced?
I think the worst station I've been on for really bad storms was Wolf Rock. I think everybody would tell you that, you know. God, the old tower used to shook there.
What was it like inside when it shook?
Everything would vibrate, you know. I remember one storm there. We had to stay up all night because the waves were so high that we were hitting the tower and also going past the lantern, that the mantles we had on these burners, incandescent burners they were called then, kept breaking away. And we ran out of mantles, and we had to send a message ashore the next day, so that one of the helicopters from Cold Rose brought us a new lot out. They just dropped them down on a piece of, well, their equipment they use, and then we collected it from the gallery. Cool, it's the worst storm I've ever known. Terrific. Of course, we've had more since then, but I haven't been there.
What did it actually feel like at the lantern level?
It's very frightening at times, you know. Of course, we were all green then, I suppose, but once you got used to it, you didn't take any notice, you know. But condensation, when you're shut up like that, used to be terrific, you know. So everything would be water running everywhere, even in your bunks, you know. So, wasn't very nice. We're all glad when the seas died away and get some fresh air into the place. There.
What was the heating like inside there then?
Well, we had one of these, I think most of the towers then had the old Cornish ranges. Oh, they were horrible, dirty old things, but they threw out the heat, you know. And we all had to clean them every morning. The routine was pretty hard then as well. You had to clean all these stoves with, remember the old zebra polish? Yeah, you would have splashed it all over the top of the stove and in front, and they had brass knobs everywhere, you know. All had to be kept clean.
Did these stoves have the Trinity crest on?
No, not the Cornish Rangers did, no. I think eventually they brought in the old Rayborn, didn't they? Yeah, Rayborn stoves. They were quite good. The problem, like Wolf Rock and Longships and, well, all the towers, you want to be very careful about water. Because you want to go, you didn't waste water, you know. You want to be very careful because they only took about so many hundreds of gallons of water, and sometimes the ship couldn't get near you to fill up again. I think that was the worst part.
Now with cooking and stuff like that,
Oh, we had plenty of cooking utensils. That was all right. No problem there.
was it duty cook then?
Yes, yes. We took it in turns those days, every third day. So it gave you a break. What the keepers used to do at one time, they used to share all their expenses for meat and all that. But eventually each keeper, they got a bit fussy later on in years, I suppose, and all the new stuff coming out, that they used to put their meat out, whoever was the cook, and he would cook their meat and all that, you know. Same as the veg as well. Supply the veg wasn't every third day. And that was the trouble, getting fresh veg there, you know, but it was keeping it. Could get the veg ashore all right. But it was keeping it nice and fresh. It only lasted about a week, 10 days, fresh food, but or vegetables. But then we all went on tin stuff, you know, which wasn't very nice.
And this was, how many months on were you doing then?
2 months at a time, yeah, 2 months.
So by the end of your second month, were you all on tins?
No, what we used to do, get a message ashore, like from the Wolf, and they would take it at the depot, and then they'd send it up to the shops in Penzance, and they would deliver it the morning before, prior to the relief, you know. And the keeper coming off, he would have to pack all the stuff up, you know. But we had quite a large supply of old tin stuff in emergency. You could only use it after you was overdue 24 hours or something like that, you know. It was old tin stuff and beef and jam and butter and all that, you know.
Was it any good?
Oh yes, it was quite good, yeah, ration, yeah. You want to pay for it, mine. One of these huge great books again, and like Trinity, like all their paperwork. Oh, it's a problem. And you had to collect all the money from the keepers, and so forth. Yeah, but worked out all right in the end, you know. So.
What was the contact with the shore like in those days?
Well, it wasn't very good. Actually, we had one of these old-fashioned RT sets, you know. Dreadful reception and all that, you know. I think we had to pass a message sometimes from the Wolf to the longships, and the keepers there would send it ashore to one of the wives on the, because they had RT equipment, you know. I don't know where they got it from. But they used to pick up the messages and get it to the depot in that way, you know. Yeah.
So all in all, were you glad to come ashore from the rocks?
Oh yes, we was all glad to come ashore from the rocks. Even better still when it was month and month about, you know. It was great, because the month used to fly. Yeah, it's pretty good.
When you did your 2 months on and your month off, did you have many overdues out there?
Oh yes, terrific a lot of overdues. I spent one time 12 weeks on the Wolf alone. Just couldn't get at us. Hopeless.
So what happens then?
Well, your months didn't start ashore until you got ashore, you know. And yeah, that's right, yes, your month didn't start until you landed ashore. And you could imagine the keepers on boards, because their second month wouldn't start until the keepers from ashore came off. So, well, there'd been weeks and weeks and weeks there, you know. A long time. So unreal. Some of them didn't end up with a nervous breakdown, you know.
Are you sort of all hitting the emergency rations then?
Oh yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
And I suppose there's also the other thing, you're all keyed up to go ashore and then a storm breaks.
Oh, I know, that was the most disappointing, that was, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I take it you enjoyed your life as a keeper, did you?
Oh, I did, yes, I enjoyed it very, very much, yeah. And they were very good to us, you know. If you treated them right, well, they treated you all right, you know. So, yes, I enjoyed it, I did.
All right, thanks very much.
Welcome.